Hey, welcome to Dolly Talk, and I am here with Farrell.
Hi.
How are you guys?
Yeah,
Kind of impromptu, but no one else is
very
streaming right
impromptu.
now. Excuse me, sorry, allergies. So yeah, we're just doing the Mathew Moore opening statements. Hey, Lefty, already here. So I invited Jamie. Not sure if she's available because we literally decided to do this 5 minutes ago. So
give me 2 seconds.
No worries. I am going. Okay, perfect. You posted it. Hey, Sea Swept, Miami Spice, Irish, Iris. So yeah, Mathew Moore opening statements. They're about an hour. And then Nick's doing his Friday stream, which will be fun. It's a really good one. Hey, Christine. Mads. Mads accused of unaliving his wife. It's really kind of really sad, but Diane Menashe is his lawyer. She is phenomenal.
Yes, I love her. Her and the one from Baker's, Rosie from Baker's Trial, are my favorite female attorneys.
Oh, yeah. Attention to the representative of the state.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Oh, and I think this is this was the trial when it's the DA and then prosecutor under her, but she had to be called out. So the younger prosecutor wanted the judge to stop court for a few minutes and then just starts freaking out on the judge and storms out. And the judge is just like, well, okay. And then continues.
Was that this one?
I think so.
Or was that
Yeah, I think it was right after the state rested.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I thought it I thought it was I think it is this one, you're right.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was this or I think it is though.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As the judge just stated to you, opening statements is our chance to give you a roadmap. I know that this courtroom's a little wonky right now, so I'll probably wander back and forth, so please don't mind me over here. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I first get a new book.
What's funny is Diane Menashe did an interview because she was in the William Husel trial. And you see her right now, she has this resting bee face and is just really intimidating. So this big juror told her afterwards that he was really intimidated by her, but in person she's really nice. But it's just funny to see her demeanor here. It's even a little softer than it was in the William Husel trial.
One of the first things I do is actually read the last few chapters.
Yes, I believe it is.
It gives me an idea of where things are going to go. The ending is usually the most important part. It's usually the most exciting part. But what I've learned over the years is that that's a pretty bad practice to have, because without an understanding of the characters, of the plot, of what's happening beforehand, the ending really can be far different than what you're reading in black and white, what you see in front of you. Now,
please like and subscribe to
what you'll see in this case, ladies and gentlemen, is that
Farrell and I.
This is really no different than some of those books. The ending that you may just see if you were presented that today is not what it seems. And what you'll hear during the testimony, during the evidence in this case, is that there's a lot of things you need to be aware of about what happened before Emily Noble went missing, what was happening and what people were doing while Emily Noble was missing, and what happened afterwards. Those details are extremely important in this case, and we ask you to focus on those details as you hear the evidence. What we expect you to hear during the presentation of the next 2 weeks, when you hear the evidence, the testimony, is that you'll see the ending in this case. You'll see that this is a very real case. This isn't a book. This is very real. And it'll be clear to you what happened to Emily Noble.
Yeah.
Emily Noble was born on May 24th of 1968. You'll hear from friends, family, people that knew her, will describe it to her, that she was outdoorsy, that she liked to forage for plants and herbs in various forested areas. The exact place that you went yesterday during your jury view, specifically, and I'll point that to you here in a second. You'll hear that she was outgoing and never met a stranger. You also hear that she was brave, and you'll hear ample testimony about Emily Noble's life. Now, you'll hear early on from some of the people most closely related that knew Emily the best. You'll hear from her sister that during this time period, where most of the facts and circumstances of this case will be, which is May 24th, May 25th, and May 26th, that was a special time period for both Emily and her sister. You'll find out through the testimony, and we expect you'll hear that today, that Emily and her sister were born 2 days apart, the 24th and the 26th. And so the 25th was the one date and time that they were the same age. And that was a special time for them and something that they seemingly celebrated almost every year. What you'll hear during the testimony in this case is, again, the experiences everyone had with Emily. And the one thing that I think will be prevalent is that she has undergone a large amount of tragedy in her life. And as you'll hear testimony, we expect you'll hear testimony that during all these trials and tribulations that Emily went through, she was brave, she persevered, and fought through. Now, we expect during the testimony that you'll hear evidence that Emily was previously married. The individual's name is Mark.
Are you distant?
Me too,
You'll hear that
Yeah.
at one point while they were married, Mark died in 2011, and that he committed suicide. What you'll hear is that, again, that happened in 2011, and we expect you'll hear testimony about how Emily dealt with that in her personal life, her friends and family that were around her at that time, and how she persevered through a very trying time in her life. We also expect that you'll hear testimony.
Don't you have to go to work?
Both of Emily's parents died within a year of each other in 2015 and 2016.
And just pay attention.
Don't encourage him, Iris.
Pay attention to like all the loss and grief in his life and his wife's life.
Right.
Like he's not accused of doing any of it apart from his wife. And it's just
And that, again,
so frustrating.
Emily, we expect you'll hear testimony, her reactions to that, what she did to work through those issues, what she did to work through that stress. We expect you'll hear testimony from those individuals over the next 2 weeks. During that same time frame, Emily met the defendant, Mathew Moore. When Emily met Mr. Moore, he also had a son that he brought to that marriage, and that son's name is Joey. We expect you to hear testimony a little bit about Joey over the next couple of weeks. What you'll hear is that during their marriage, up until 2018, that leading up to their marriage, that there was a relationship between Mr. Moore and Mr. Noble, Miss Noble and Mr. Moore, that they met each other, that they started a relationship. At that time, the defendant was living in Las Vegas. Eventually came to Westerville, and that's where they lived in their condo at Abbey Cross. From that time period on, the two of them, as well as Joey, lived at that location, the location that you saw yesterday during the jury view. As I mentioned, you'll hear a little bit of testimony about their relationship during that time period, friends as well as family members that were around during that. Once the defendant was around, we expect you'll hear testimony from the witnesses over the next couple of weeks that some of those relationships that Emily had, longstanding relationships with friends, became strained, that they became less frequent.
Go to work, Lefty.
More routine or even yearly get-togethers ceased happening, and that those relationships.
And he's just writing like this prosecutor is a d-bag over and over again.
Phone, text messages.
Maybe he's working on his book.
Yearly meetings and get-togethers that
Yeah,
were
like
so
Jensen
prevalent
did.
and important to many people became less frequent. We expect you'll hear that in 2000.
I'm trying to do something, see?
Tragedy struck Emily Noble once more. And that was when the son of the defendant,
Thank you, Distant.
Joey, who was living there, that Emily took a passion to, committed suicide as well. Now, what's important to note, and I expect the testimony that you'll hear over the next 2 weeks will demonstrate to you.
Not putting that up, but yes, and
Emily was proactive when these issues occurred in her life. She sought therapy. She talked to others. During this time period, after Joey committed suicide in 2019, we expect that you'll hear testimony that she took time off of work to be at home with the defendant, to work through what had just happened in their life, to seek therapy. And that towards the end of 2019, after doing those things, after being proactive, she continued to persevere and went back to work.
their entire theory is her depression and grief was treated.
Now,
The-
we also
Well,
expect to
and
hear
that-
testimony that leading up to that,
No, I was just, I hate
Yeah.
their reasoning for why she couldn't have done it to herself.
Anybody who's ever had depression, like people hide it, and
Well, her appointments and stuff that he's getting
Yeah.
to in a minute, that just drives me crazy.
yeah,
and then going now into 2020, that Emily was making real changes in her life. She was changing her lifestyle, her diet, trying to be more physically fit, those types of things that she's been working through over the course of the years, and that she was making serious changes in her life and seemingly was in a good place based on individuals that were around her, speaking with her and talking with her.
There we go.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's information we expect you to hear over the next 2 weeks. And I think that that's
yeah, jackpot. She was just as good as William Husel in that trial, and she didn't do the openings, but yeah, it was to be able to be next to Jose Baez and still stand out is you have to be very talented.
is of paramount importance to understand the background
Oh, okay,
What
that's
was
the one I
occurring
remember her
prior
from.
to
Yeah,
the
Besides
disappearance
this.
of Emily Noble.
another good
We
trial.
expect that you'll hear ample
Yeah.
testimony over that,
Just
of
long.
that over the next 2 weeks.
As much as I don't like him
But ladies and
over
gentlemen,
the Florida case, he's an excellent attorney too.
I know. Yeah, and in that one, the judge hated. Well, his
I just
Ego
don't like
and-
his opening statement crap.
for Casey or in William Husel,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was effective
That
though.
was, well, I guess. I mean, it worked for her.
Yeah,
gentlemen, you'll also hear testimony about May 24th, 2020, May 25th of 2020. And that is the last time Emily Noble was found alive.
exactly.
We expect you'll hear testimony that on the 24th, which of course, was her birthday. That she and the defendant went to a water spring in Buckle, Ohio, which is about an hour and a half southeast.
It's Bookdale.
It's his father.
Columbus.
It's
That they had
Bookdale.
plans that day. Eventually went back to their home in Westerville, in the what's known as the Uptown Westerville area, which is the little downtown area where there are many stores, restaurants, places you can walk back and forth, walk into. You'll hear that the two of them went to a couple of different establishments, Old Bag of Nails, Cobley, Jimmy V's. Again, these are restaurants that are located in Uptown Westerville. And that roughly around the time period of 7 p.m., a little bit before, they were back at their home on Abbey Cross in Westerville, the place that you visited yesterday. You'll see throughout this trial, there were a few pictures taken from that day, pictures of Ms. Noble, the defendant. And one thing that you'll note is that these are regular pictures, selfies, no injuries.
June of 22, last year.
Yeah.
So just over a year ago. And then Husel was in April of 22.
Neck, face area, and that becomes important when we're looking at the timeline of events. And again, you'll hear testimony about this as we go through this case over the next 2 weeks. The next day, on May 25th of 2020, we expect you'll see evidence.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 5:47 p.m. that the defendant made a phone call to one of Emily's friends to say she was missing. It wasn't then until 5:54 p.m. that the Westerville Police Department was first notified that Miss Noble had seemingly disappeared and vanished out of sight. What we'll ask you to do is focus on the timeline of events, and you'll hear testimony over the next 2 weeks.
Let me know if that's too fast.
You can see a body camera from one of the officers today that originally came out to the scene and spoke to Mr. Moore. Expect that during that testimony, you hear evidence that Mr. Moore was awake, according to his words, as early as 10 a.m. Again, as early as 10 a.m., the phone call made with the friend was at 5:47 p.m. We expect that you'll hear his story initially. That the two of them came back to their house, slept together in the bedroom. That he woke up at some point at 1:30 in the morning, went, slept in another room, and then when he woke up, she was gone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see pictures of the house. You'll hear the statements made by Mr. Moore at the time. And what you'll find out during the testimony is that not only had Emily apparently disappeared, according to the defendant's own statement, but that was done without a note. You'll find out that she didn't tell anyone she was leaving. Her phone was left behind. Her ID was left behind. Her wallet was still at the house. Her car was still at the house.
Because
And that
she walked
seemingly
into the
disappeared
woods.
after making the bed that morning. You also hear testimony that leading up to that weekend, Ms. Noble made a dentist appointment for the following week. And that was not canceled. We also expect
She's not going to cancel it if she decides to unalive herself. It's not like she has to worry about.
You always cancel your appointments before you unalive yourself.
It's not like you have to worry about being charged for not showing up. What are they going to do?
That's why I said all of their reasons are like, what?
Like those,
have you ever known anybody that did this?
Yeah, it's like those detective books or shows there. Oh, he's got a steak marinating in his fridge. He wasn't planning on unaliving himself. Lord.
Exactly.
After your testimony.
Well, first of all, I have some steak in there that's bad, that's still marinating. I haven't thrown out yet. So never mind.
Nothing had changed with her employment. And seemingly everything was
ADHD, sorry.
We've noticed.
What you'll hear during the testimony, during the body cam, as well as testimony from officers and detectives from the Westerville Police Department, is that the defendant's statements jump around. The timeline is unclear, his own timeline. Where individuals were is unclear. And that seemingly statements are made initially to control the situation. We expect you'll hear testimony of that today. Shortly after, actually that day as well as going forward, you'll hear from numerous individuals that were part of the search process to find Emily Noble.
Exactly.
We expect you'll hear through testimony that
for his wife.
individuals that were part of that search process may have never even met the defendant. Some of them had met him one time when they initially went and got flyers very early on in the investigation or when the disappearance first happened, but otherwise didn't see or even meet the defendant while these searches occurred for almost 4 months. You'll hear about these searches that police were involved, friends were involved, people that never met Emily were involved because they wanted to do their part to help.
That's what he's writing
Searching
down.
close by, further away, woods, water, basically any area.
Points of BS. I hope I can get him on and then we can ask him what he was writing.
Some
That's a good.
cell phone forensics that were done.
Jamie.
That is a good question. You might want to ask him.
Exactly.
Also maybe like what his favorite sports teams are, and name of his best friend when he was in second grade.
Yes.
Just get to know the guy.
Where his job is, the
Exactly.
address.
What his first job was, his first car.
No, I
And
want
got
his
his-
current job and address.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that seems like a good interview question.
Yeah.
On the cell phones, attempts by law enforcement to put a timeline of events together. And again, as we go through that evidence, you'll see, or we expect that you'll see, the discrepancies that are occurring during this time
For
period,
sure.
not only leading up to Emily's disappearance, but also the night in question on the 24th and 25th. September 16th, 2020 is when you'll find out that the remains of Emily Noble were first located. What you'll hear is that 3 ladies, one of which knew Emily, one was the sister of that individual, and then a third person that had never met Emily in her life,
Hi,
were
Dave.
searching a wooded area that was nearby the condo. That after searches that had occurred for the better part of 3, almost 4 months at that time, resulted in not finding
Right?
that
Better
searches
not.
more close by started to occur again, places that were thought to have been previously searched. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you went on a jury view yesterday, and what we expect the testimony will show, and I'm going to mark on the screen so that you have a chance to see what we're talking about. I put a red X on the location on Abbey Cross Lane. That's the location you first stopped at yesterday, the home of Emily Noble and the defendant. You'll see just to the west, there's another red line there. That little, what appears to be a street is actually the bike path that you walked through yesterday. And then that wooded area to the west, that direction, is the wooded area that you'll hear about over the next 2 weeks. The area that Emily Noble was found was roughly in that area where I just placed the X there. Now, you'll hear testimony from the 3 individuals that found Emily that they were walking down the bike path, walking in a westward direction. The woods became crowded. As you all witnessed firsthand yesterday, there's shrubs and trees and things all over the place, and it's not readily apparent how you can get through the wooded area. But we expect to hear testimony from the 3 individuals that as they were walking in a westward direction, eventually they found the remains of them and found what they were looking for. You'll hear testimony that they called Westerville police, and at that time, Emily was finally found. You'll see pictures of the scene taken from DCI. You'll see pictures of Emily and how she's situated. And what you'll see is that she was in a kneeling position under a tree that was about almost 6.5 feet tall, and was found with a micro USB cord wrapped around her neck. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't the end of the investigation. And you'll hear testimony towards the tail end of these 2 weeks about the physical examinations that were then done, both on the scene as well as Emily Noble's remains. What we expect you'll hear during the testimony from the 2 experts from the state is that Emily had bilateral fractures of the hyoid bone, which is a bone further up in the neck area. And they'll describe to you and show you where that bone is located, where the fractures were located. But bilateral meaning one on each side, pressure on both sides. We also expect during the testimony you'll hear there are bilateral fractures of the greater horns of the thyroid cartilage, which is roughly an inch or so under in the same neck structures where the hyoid bone would be. And again, you'll hear testimony from a couple of experts demonstrating where that area is located on a body. You'll hear that there was trauma to the left maxilla, the nasal bones, the left side of her face, up by her nose, top of her lip area. And what we expect you'll hear during the testimony is that these injuries that are described were all perimortem, or at or around the time of death, as opposed to healing fractures that occurred earlier in time, or items that or injuries that would have occurred after death. And we expect you'll hear testimony in that regard from many witnesses over the next 2 weeks, those experts. Specifically of those experts, we expect towards the tail end of our case that you'll hear from Dr. Smock.
Dr. Schmuck?
And during his testimony, he'll go through with you his experience, his background, his education, and we expect that his opinion will weigh heavy in this case. We expect during the testimony you'll hear from Dr. Smock that Emily Noble did not die of an incomplete hanging. The scene itself was not consistent with the injuries he noted. And that his belief is based on the location, the bilateral fractures, that the cause of death of Emily Noble was a manual strangulation. And we expect your testimony based on his experiences dealing with these types of cases, his educational background, why you will be able to make that finding and demonstrate that to you.
It is, see.
We also expect Dr. Smock will explain to you that based on the scene, based on the injuries, based on his opinion, this was a staged suicide, something that made it look like a suicide. Again, if you read the end of that book and saw the pictures and saw Miss Noble the way she was, you may think one thing. When you get a chance to hear about the characters and see the timeline of events and see the injuries and hear all this testimony, the ending is not what it seemed maybe at first glance, but it's far more complicated and far more real than that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we expect that what you'll hear during the testimony as well is that Mr. Moore, from the beginning, was trying to control the situation, that he continued to stage this scene other than the physical scene that you saw or that you'll see occurred in those woods. And we expect that you'll hear during the testimony that Mr. Moore, the night of the 24th, going into the early morning of the 25th, that very important time frame in this case, that between 1 and 4 in the morning, he's sending messages to friends, stating he's taking a sleeping pill and that's probably going to sleep in. Again, I believe the evidence will demonstrate that Mr. Moore is controlling the scene, trying to stage what eventually will be located in those woods. That becomes of paramount importance when we believe you'll hear testimony today of Mr. Moore and comparing Mr. Moore's original statements to law enforcement about when he woke up, roughly 10 or 11 a.m., that's inconsistent with some of the activity that occurred on his phone, demonstrating that he was awake far earlier than that at 8:30 in the morning, and that he was awake even further in the earlier morning up until about 4 in the morning. So we expect that when you hear the testimony that there's a major discrepancy in the time frame.
No, the dogs are very intuitive.
When you hear the initial statements, as well as when looking at the cell phone forensics. Ladies and gentlemen, we expect you will find out during the testimony that that's not all. That the defendant sent a text message to Emily just before noon on the 25th, used the Find My iPhone app, which is an application designed to try to find where someone else's phone may be. And that he did that in around noon hour on the 25th, instead of leaving the room that he was laying in, instead of walking through the house to see if Ms. Noble was there. And again, we expect you to hear testimony that it wasn't for at least 6 hours after that before Mr. Moore finally called someone and said, "My wife is missing." Ladies and gentlemen, you'll see body camera footage from Officer Hollis today. Again, Officer Hollis is the responding officer on the scene. He came, had the initial conversations with Mathew Moore.
Stupid
We
mute.
expect
He's
to
not
see
shady. He
during that
doesn't
body
have
camera
to
footage.
do a welfare check after 2 hours.
So there's a specific area noted in the back of the garage that after some period of time, almost 2 hours after the report, Mr. Moore points to and says, "This is
Reminds
weird.
me of the guy selling ShamWow.
This cord doesn't belong here." And what we expect you'll see during the body
Oh,
camera
wait,
footage
there's more.
is that there have been things moved during the pendency of when Officer Hollis originally first comes on scene to when the defendant points this area out. Following that conversation and during that conversation, you'll hear that Mr. Moore says, "This area is weird. I haven't touched it, but this seems out of place to me. Somebody must have done this." But what we expect you'll hear is that this is just another example of the defendant controlling the scene, staging the scene to make this look like something other than what it was.
Trying to be helpful.
Staging the
So, ladies and
scene.
gentlemen, after 2 weeks of testimony, you're going to hear evidence about cell phones, physical evidence. You're going to hear about the parties, everyone involved. And we ask you to be diligent in your review. Diligent in your review of the timeline, how things go together, and diligent when reviewing this case and discussing. And at the end of this 2 weeks, we're going to ask you to see this for exactly what this is.
What are you doing?
And we're going to ask you to make a finding of guilty of the charge of murder.
Guilty.
Thank you. Please give your attention for counsel.
Here we go.
Would you mind keeping the lights at that
Here
level?
is
Ooh, she's a
she's
cutie.
about as great as Rosemary.
That's what I said. Those two are my favorite.
Yeah. What's that supposed to mean?
Dave.
Here comes Mana.
Oh yeah, 'cause the dogs bark and scare your cat.
She's pretty good, Murph.
She's intense.
They're both just sharks.
As I introduced myself yesterday, Diane Menashe on behalf of Matt Moore, my co-counsel, Alexander Petrello.
Yeah, you might have to turn her down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just listened to them for about 30 minutes, and they told you their theory. Their theory is that Matt Moore killed his wife. Don't know when, but Matt Moore kills his wife, and then somehow gets her body into the wooded area where you walked yesterday and stages her death. And then I heard the state go on to say that their evidence will show how not just was he that sophisticated to figure out those two things, but he then also took great efforts to control the situation after May 24th and May 25th of 2020. Members of the jury, the evidence will show that the state's theory is based on speculation and inferences.
Everything that guy just said
It is
bull.
not supported by the evidence.
Thank you.
And simply members of the jury, their theory doesn't make sense. Now, I know you were listening to the state's opening just as well
Oh,
as I
no,
was.
Murphs.
And the judge has already told you that our opening statements
Very
are not
expensive.
evidence. They are just how we believe the evidence will unfold. But I say this, that in my 30 some minutes of listening to the state's argument, I noted that they didn't mention reasonable doubt. That is their burden. Their burden is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And we talked about that in voir dire. It's their burden and their burden alone. And the judge has already given you the instructions of law, and he will again, which say, if the state fails to meet their burden, then the only appropriate verdict as to each of the three counts in this case is not guilty. And here's why I mentioned reasonable doubt and that they didn't mention it. Is because as the judge has told you, and as I talked about in voir dire, reasonable doubt is a doubt based on reason and common sense. And so I want to talk about this morning during my opening statement as to why it doesn't make sense that Mathew Moore, and I'll call him Matt, that Matt killed his wife Emily and then staged her suicide. First, members of the jury, the evidence will show there's no physical evidence. You will hear evidence the state will put on, we anticipate, that law enforcement extensively searched the area of 46 Abbey Cross. Not just Westerville Police Departments, but the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations was brought in. A unit whose sole job, members of the jury, is to look for forensics. They're there
David,
too.
Uh-oh.
And it's not just
I know.
Farrell Live.
Live.
Live Farrell.
Live.
just the house. And when I say the house, members of the jury, the evidence will show that they searched the entire perimeter area. But the evidence will also show that exhaustively and extensively, they searched the Ultima, they searched the Subaru,
Such a pet
they
peeve of mine.
searched the attic with Matt's permission, by the way, did they do all these searches. They searched the bedding,
Wherever.
the sheets that were in Joey's bedroom, where Matt Moore told the police the evidence will show he slept once he got up in the middle of the night and he had to go to the bathroom. He slept in that bedroom. More bedding.
Yes, they searched the attic.
They searched
I was not there.
the bathroom, and this is why this is important. The evidence will show members of jury, and in particular, what was in the hamper in the bathroom, because they searched this too. The evidence will show that the clothing in the hamper is the same clothing that Matt Moore and Emily Moore were wearing on her birthday the night before, when she's last seen. And so what comes of all these searches that were made by law enforcement, not just at Westerville Police Department, but also for BCI&I, the house, the cars, the attic, the clothes, the evidence will show you that there's nothing. There's no blood, there's no tissue, there's no fibers, there's nothing. But the evidence will show it wasn't just people
CSUP
that
did it.
all those places that we just went through.
Guilty.
It was also cadaver dogs. Cadaver dogs that the evidence will tell you are trained specifically to come to a scene, a location, and alert when they smell or detect either blood,
Of course
tissue,
not,
Look at
Max.
those
or
heels.
any smell of death. The cadaver dogs, in addition to
back to her.
humans, searched all the areas I just told you about. And what will the evidence show that the cadaver dogs found? Nothing.
Nothing.
Zilch.
There's no physical injuries. And when I say physical injuries, I mean to Matt. He calls the 911, as the state has said, on May 25th and reports that his wife is missing. I want to pause there, though. He calls 911, brings the police to his house. The evidence will show certainly that that's what a 911 call does. Common sense tells us that. They get there, and then within 48 hours, they ask my client, Matt, to come down to the police station and give a statement, and he does. He goes to the police station, and when he's there, two of the detectives say, "What about scratches or injuries on you?" The evidence will show that Matt Moore takes off his shirt, not at the direction of the state, but he takes off his shirt. Now, before he takes off his shirt, of course, his face is exposed, and you're going to see a body cam video of Officer Hollis, and you will see what Matt Moore is wearing when the officers arrive. And you'll see which parts of his body are exposed.
Oh.
So he takes off his shirt. Officers lean in. Hands, forearms, chest, neck, face, back, legs. What did they find? Nothing.
Nothing.
And consider this evidence, members of the jury, or the
For sure,
lack
Dave.
of evidence, particularly after you went to that wooded area yesterday.
Because she's
The
not a
judge is correct
prosecutor.
to say that your jury view in and of itself is not evidence. But it is, as the judge told you yesterday, something for you to consider when you hear the evidence that's presented. Think about how hard it was to get down there. And I even just wrote what the state said in their opening about that area. It says it was essentially shrubs and trees,
Are you
not
British?
readily apparent it's even there. Now, members of the jury, again, our statements are not evidence, but what the state says they will give to you to meet their burden, hold them to it. Because as they started this morning, that is their roadmap. So there's no physical injuries on Matt Moore. There's no time of death in this case, members of the jury. The state has alleged, and the judge read you the charges, and the state has just stood up in his opening and said that on May 24th and May 25th of 2020, Matt Moore killed his wife. And then there's also a charge of felonious assault, but there's 2 counts of murder and felonious assault. The dates are the 24th and 25th. There is no witness. There is no expert. There is no police officer. There is no lay witness that can or will give you the time of death. And I remember in voir dire yesterday when I was talking to the veneer about dates and attention span, and I remember saying dates are incredibly important in this case. The dates we know are the date that Emily went missing. The last she was seen is by a neighbor that lives across from 46 Abbey Cross, where you went yesterday. In fact, the neighbor that lives directly across the street. He sees Emily going for a walk that morning in her walking clothes.
In her walking clothes.
And we know the evidence will show.
Later, Lefty.
Evidence that we will present.
Bye.
And I'll talk about that in a minute.
Have fun at
We
work.
know that he definitely saw Emily on the 25th and not any other day based on the cell phone evidence. So there is no time of death. We know that Emily went missing on March 25th is when she's last seen by someone other than Matt Moore. And we know that she's found on September 16th. We do not know when she got to the park or how she got to the park. But with respect to time of death, there is no information that the state will offer you as to that at any point in this trial. We will, however, present expert from University of Tennessee, who is a researcher at an institute called the Body Farm.
Ooh.
And in fact, it's an expert that the state originally engaged.
The body
in this
count at
case,
the body farm.
and then the evidence will show decided not to use after she rendered a
Currently?
Objection. Fair characterization.
Ladies and gentlemen, opening statement is not evidence, so therefore you will not consider statements as evidence to render your decision.
Guy needs to do a better job kerning his
Thank you.
name.
Dr. Vivaldi is an expert from the University of Tennessee. She will testify
I love her.
that the most you can tell from the scene, based on her training and expertise,
Werewolf
and
guys
her
are sad.
work studying decaying corpses, is that the body decomposed there and had been there for a while. There is no time frame that even the best expert
Me too,
can
Eris.
put as to where and when Emily got to that scene. Furthermore, not only is there not a time of death, but the evidence will also show that there is no trace of Emily in that wooded area in May or June of 2020. And I want to go over some maps with you. And I know members of the jury, you were there yesterday.
I don't like this argument of theirs.
Start with this. This, as the state just showed you, is the map of the general area. To orient ourselves, this is kind of the general area right here where Emily's found. And as you are walking up that sidewalk, you might remember seeing an electrical box on the ground. That can always orient you in the pictures that you will see. But that's the general area right there where Emily was found. And yesterday, of course, this right here is the bike path, walking path. And this, of course, is County Line Road. Want to talk to you about when I say the evidence will show there's no trace of Emily in the woods or May or June. You are going to hear testimony that on the 25th, when the police arrived at the house, Matt Moore voluntarily said to the police officers, "Let me take you to the area where Emily loved to walk and forage." Where did he take her? Where did he take the police? Right there.
Ooh, that was
Their
a
own officers will have to admit to that.
not
Matt,
great slip.
as the evidence will show, walked them along this very line. And then what happened, well, the evidence will show that area, that exact area. In fact, the police will not only concede this during the evidence of this case, but they have all along in this investigation. They searched this area on foot 3 times. 3 times in May and June, and nothing. But like with the house and the car and the attic, it wasn't just humans, because cadaver dogs searched that area too. The evidence will show, and what was found when cadaver dogs went to the area where Matt Moore took the police as Emily's favorite walking path? Nothing. The evidence will also show the individual that lives at that house right there, whose kids play in the back of her house, butts right up to that wooded area, was home all Memorial Day weekend. Whether the weather was warm, the evidence will show. She saw nothing. She smelled nothing. No trace of Emily in the woods in May or June. Furthermore, the evidence will show that there's no evidence that connects Matt Moore to this scene. The state has just promised you
Hi,
that
Shelley.
they will give you the testimony of Detective Hollis. And I believe that will happen today, and you will be able to see the body cam of Detective Hollis when he rolls up onto Abbey Cross on May 25th and interacts with Matt Moore. The state in their opening talked to you about this corner of the garage. The Detective Hollis body cam will also show you something else that's interesting. Is that in the camera, in the footage, the police are, from the beginning, telling Matt that he's a suspect, that they know they killed his wife. Right from the beginning. And so why is this important? Is because the evidence will show that if that's what the officers were thinking, that common sense and the evidence supports, they didn't lose sight of that guy. They did not lose sight of him. Not mentioned, but the evidence will show that on May 25th, because not only did they not want to lose sight of him, they didn't want to lose track.
Did you see what he just did?
They put a GPS on his car.
He just tagged me
Without him even
on a
knowing.
link from my own stream.
Because that's the whole point of a GPS, right? Put it on someone's car so they don't know them looking or following, so that we can
David, I'm
trace
aware.
their
I'm
every
here.
move at any minute of any day. What do they find from the GPS? Nothing. Further, not only is there no movement from Abbey Cross and Matt to that scene, is that the items found at the scene, forensically tested, in particular, the USB cord that Emily had tied around her neck.
Salvador?
What forensics are on the USB cord
Just thought you'd not want to know.
connecting the cord to Matt?
In case you weren't sure.
Nothing. Further, there's no eyewitnesses. And I don't just mean eyewitnesses to what they claim is the murder, to the transportation, allegedly, of a body to a wooded area. There's no eyewitnesses to putting a body in there. And members of the jury, again, I say this. I know the judge told you your jury view wasn't evidence, but it's certainly for your consideration. You walked county line. You were able to feel and observe the amount of traffic on that road. You were also able to feel and observe whether there is a place where you can park on that road next to the wooded area.
I swear, somebody just tagged me again.
There's no eyewitnesses.
Jamie?
And certainly there was no eyewitness given by the state in their map.
Whew.
There's also members of the jury, the evidence will show no motive. And I know we talked about this yesterday in voir dire, that the state under Ohio law doesn't have to give you motive. And I completely agree with that. I also, though, as the judge will tell you, agree that there is a further instruction, that the absence of motive can be used by you in your determination as to purpose or intent. And the judge will tell you more about that, but it's critically important. Now, in the state's opening, they talked about Emily's bravery and her persistence. Joey, Matt's son, at around the age 18, hung himself with a cord in a wooded area about 1 mile from Atticus. About 10 months prior to Emily being found in a wooded area with a cord around her neck. There is no question that Joey's death was a suicide. That's what the evidence will show. His
Thanks
death
for that,
was a
Iris.
suicide. And I remember during voir dire, one of the jurors said, second most common death of juveniles is suicide, and Joey was a victim of that statistic. And the state actually, and I will agree, that Joey's suicide and hanging was particularly troublesome to both Matt and Emily. Both of them, neither of them could work. Emily took a 3 to 4 months absence from her job. Matt, well, you'll see there's text messages between Emily and Matt. Matt really was at a place in his life where getting up every day and just even doing things of normalcy was well, seemingly impossible. And the evidence will show that. And then the state talked about what Emily did was that Emily then went to counseling in August of 2019 because of Joey's death. And members of the jury, you will hear that when she goes to counseling, she goes because she is traumatized by the death and loss of Joey. She reports difficulty feeling sad and empty and guilty. She's paranoid about her husband's well-being. She's struggling with loss of interest in activities, with memories. She notes in her therapy that she has a prior history with struggling with anxiety. And members of the jury, the evidence will show she has a history of struggling with anger prior to the loss of her other loved ones. And she's starting to experience depression and notes that she's experienced depression before. The state in its opening talked about Emily's traumatic life. And I say this, there's not a lot of things that the evidence will be agreed upon by both sides in this case, but certainly that's one that I agree. Emily's first husband killed himself by shooting his head in 2011. A year later, in 2012, the evidence will show one of her very good friends killed herself. The evidence will show that. In 2017, her brother-in-law, by marriage, so Mark's brother, kills himself.
Jesus.
In 2019,
Everybody, just
Joey hangs himself in a park from a tree.
Like,
Trauma is
like,
everyone the woman knows killed him.
like
Unless
is she Hillary Clinton? I'm not like making light of this poor man and his poor wife. It's like, why would she want to unalive herself? Because everybody in her life has passed. Like, her whole life is filled with
She didn't
trauma.
cancel that dental appointment, so.
Oh yeah,
I bet she didn't even put it in her date book.
I know.
How rude.
She filled her prescription the week before.
It's almost an understatement as to what Emily had lived through. There is no question about that.
Exactly, Pixie. the trauma is too much. You go through, you do it, but then you have a really bad day and it pushes you over the edge to do it. It's common.
Well, my thing is
Sadly.
like, they think that people doing everyday normal things means they would
Right.
never. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
are you kidding me? You know how many people?
She stopped going to therapy, so she's better.
Yeah. Yeah. My
People
dad
never quit going to therapy till they're better.
Yeah, like a few years ago, my dad didn't think I was depressed because I stayed home, watched TV, and laughed at something that was on TV.
You laugh.
was like,
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm staying home. I'm not socializing. I'm not going out.
Yeah. And a lot of
But
people
Joey,
do really normal things.
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
stepson, and again, our openings aren't arguments, but the state said Emily was passionate about Joey. And the evidence will certainly support her passion and love for Joey and what that loss in 2019 did to her, emotionally and physically. And then, members of the jury, at the end of 2019, you will see that she
Thank you, Kim.
unexpectedly stopped counseling and therapy. And instead, she turned to what Emily knew so well, which was trying to find peace in nature
Oh, wow, Suter.
and the woods. She would walk daily, she would forage, she would go into the woods. You will hear that Emily and Matt were kind of a bunch of hippies. They would collect plants, nettles, they would dry them in the garage. You're going to see pictures of this. They canned, they like to forage for their own food, despite them living in Westerville, Ohio. She went to nature, the evidence will show, to find peace. And of course, it was nature.
And like his son, who unalived himself, did it in the same manner that she would then go on to like do it.
Yeah.
And to me, that is very plausible for her to want to do it the same way.
Where she was found on September 16th of 2020.
I'm sorry?
Hey, Pat.
I was saying hi to Pass.
Oh, hey, Paz.
Fine.
How you doing?
Members of the jury, there's also no evidence of staging. I certainly listened to the state's opening that their theory is that Matt kills her, takes her to the wooded area, and then stages her death.
Look at
This
his.
is why, as you listen to this evidence, I ask you, members of the jury, to really use your common sense.
This is so sad.
Because the evidence will show that
I know.
Emily is found in the position where you stood yesterday. That branch. She's found with her water bottle next to her. Her hair is down. We know that because the way her hair is matted when she's found. Her hair is down. Hair tie around her wrist. She's in her walking clothes. And hair tie around her wrist, I just say, is because we know that the last person that saw her leaving for a walk. She's in clothing that, as you look closely, right, is clothing that you would wear when you're walking. And you don't even need to look closely because the evidence will show she has her tennis shoes on. Not the shoes or the clothing that she's seen in the night before. And the evidence will show there is no question as to what Matt and Emily were wearing on the night of the 24th of her birthday, because we have pictures, selfies, that they took of themselves at the bar as they're celebrating.
He took a selfie. She's not suicide.
And here's something else
unalivable.
with respect the evidence will show about about the staging, is that as Emily's found, her right hand is gripping her ankle. You will hear evidence about the difference between a complete hanging and an incomplete hanging. But members of the jury, there is no evidence that that scene was staged. And then lastly, I want to talk about where the state ended. Sort of the last chapter in their book is their experts. I noticed in their opening statement, they spoke a lot when they talked about their experts about Dr. Smock. And as you listen to the evidence in this case, the evidence will show that Emily goes missing on the 25th. She's found on September 16th of 20. almost a year goes by before Matt Moore is charged. Living in this community, out on the street, almost a year. And so what happens will the evidence show right before he gets charged? Again, timing is everything. Dr. Smock is engaged by the state and he issues a report. As you listen to the testimony of Dr. Smock, I ask you members of the juries to consider three things. First of all, what he relied upon in determining his conclusions. His field of expertise and the opinions that he can and cannot render. Because members of the jury, I heard the state in their opening say, quote, and then please always trust your notes over mine. Dr. Smock will tell you the cause of death was manual strangulation. I ask you members of the jury to wait until Dr. Smock's testimony because the judge will tell you that's what jurors have to do, is to be open-minded and wait till you hear all the evidence. Dr. Smock himself, under oath, will have to agree and will agree that he is actually not allowed to offer any opinions with respect to manner and cause of death. Only a medical examiner is allowed to do that. And the evidence will show that the medical examiner in this case, the doctor that actually performed the autopsy on Emily Noble's remains, that the only cause of death that that medical examiner found is that injuries to the head and neck caused her death.
I remember that. Okay.
Injuries, right? Head and neck caused her death. Now, that's what the evidence won't show. And why I led my opening with, why doesn't the state's case make sense? And while it's not my usual practice, this case is unusual in many ways. And so I will, in my opening statement, tell the jury, you, each and every one of you, what the defense will put on as evidence. And I say I don't usually do this because I don't have a burden. I, as Matt Moore's attorney, Matt Moore, Alexander Petrella, have to put on nothing. But we will. In fact, we're going to give you 4 experts and lay witnesses. And here's what a brief overview of what our experts will say. First and foremost, we'll call Dr. Bolte. Biomechanics expert. Dr. Bolte is the director at the Ohio State Biomechanics Research
I like him.
He's an expert in the experimental analysis of human injury tolerance and mechanisms under different loading conditions. Here's the value and what you will hear from Dr. Bolte. Undisputed testimony. And it's undisputed because he went to the scene and tested the branch. And he did so at the request of the state of Ohio. And I say this, members of the jury, the evidence will show again.
Yeah, he was their
we
witness.
went down there yesterday and was shown the branch. The branch where Emily was found is quite small. Quite small. Dr. Bolte will come in here and say that actually when he went down there, he as an expert in biomechanics thought there's no way this branch can hold. But he did 2 different tests, a static test and a dynamic test. Dr. Bolte will tell you that, and this is on video, you will see the videos. You will not have to imagine this. You will see the test. First test is he slowly adds weights, increments.
What are you doing, Selbert?
I'm muted.
Oh.
And I just made some funnies. No, compare.
Oh, I was like, what?
Oh, and I didn't even turn my camera on. God damn it. No, compare that to the guy in the Murdaugh trial who flipped his phone around his office for an afternoon.
I really like the videos of this guy's tests when he comes in. They did a good job with it.
Yeah, doesn't he have like his son with him or something to help him out?
Yeah, his son's out there. I think there's somebody. Oh, one time it's just him and his son, I think. Another time there's other people, but
yeah,
because he goes out there twice to work on it.
Yeah,
and he's the state's witness, but
yeah,
his findings don't compute with what they want, so they didn't.
Did the state called him though, or no?
No, she does.
Oh, okay. Oh, so Oh, wow.
Yeah, they hired him, and then they were like, "Whoa, that's
So
not what we're going
She
for."
hijacks it.
Yep.
Weights to
I
the
like that in
branch
a
to
witness.
see if not only will the branch hold, but the rate of deflection of the branch.
Thanks, Pixie.
Static test, branch holds. In fact, the deflection measurement is 2 inches. That's how strong the branch is. Then, after he's tested on the static test, he does a dynamic test. And a dynamic test, the evidence will show, is what happens if someone were to hang themselves and let their weight fall. Could it happen? He takes a crash test dummy, the same weight as Emily Noble, ties a USB cord in the same or similar fashion as Emily tied it around her neck on the 25th of May. It's on video, you will see it. And he takes the crash test dummy and he drops it. That's the branch. Holds her up. We will also give you the testimony of Dr. Heather Garvin, a forensic anthropologist who's board certified. And board certification, the evidence will show, certainly matters. She's one of 100+ individuals in this country who is a board certified forensic anthropologist. And she will talk about what the state said in their opening with respect to the fractures. Most specifically, the state just told you that there's perimortem nasal fractures. Dr. Garvin will say that in her experience, training, and education, that she sees no perimortem nasal fractures. She will also tell you that based on her training, experience, and expertise, that the bilateral fractures that the state just told you about to the greater horns of the hyoid and the bilateral fractures to the superior horns of the hyoid can occur in hangings. Incomplete and complete hangings. Now, members of the jury, you will not hear from Dr. Garvin cause of death because she cannot testify as to cause of death. Well, again, only a medical examiner can. But she will tell you about mechanisms of injury. We will also give to you the testimony of Matt Curtin. In the state's opening, I wrote down law enforcement attempts to put together a timeline based on the cell data. We will actually give you a computer scientist who is a cybersecurity expert. All he does is look at cell data and computers and peel back the onion.
He must be
find
blast
what's
at
there.
parties.
Even when the users want to hide anything and everything. That's who Matt Curtin is. And Matt will tell you 3 really important things that, again, show that the state's theories don't make sense. He'll tell you about phone location history for Matt and Emily on May 24th and 25th. He will tell you about patterns of user activity, or more specifically, he will tell you how there are no patterns because there is not enough data. He will also tell you about the user browser history. All this evidence about how Matt is so sophisticated, staging this whole area. What are his browser history searches? What are Emily's browser history searches leading up? Matt will give you that information. But I tell you this now, the evidence will show there is no browser history about how do you kill someone, how do you hang someone, how do you stage a suicide.
See, Mark Jensen?
Well,
You see how easy that is?
Nothing. There is some browser history
He didn't go to howtounaliveyourwife.com
My
and talk
God.
with a buddy at a bar when he's drunk. Jeez.
from Emily about going into the woods to find your soul, though.
Rookie
And
move,
then in
Mark.
addition, we will also give you Dr. Vidoli, which I talked about from University of Tennessee. Her entire life's work is studying bodies and their rate of decay and decomposition. In addition to experts, we'll give you some lay witnesses. Again, members of the jury, it's not our burden, but nothing could be more important. And so we will give you the cadaver dog handler. She will come in here and testify and tell you where she searched with her dogs. She will tell you what a cadaver dog is trained to do. She will tell you the expertise and certification of her dogs. And she will tell you that they found nothing.
Imagine having
We
the
will give
cadaver
you
dog
other
handler
testimony.
come in.
We propose members of the jury,
Smart
but
ass.
I remind you,
Well, to be fair, I don't think cadaver dogs are very reliable.
No.
But
Well, I'm talking about Zach's. They didn't even bring the
Oh.
handler in for his trial,
oh yeah, they didn't.
but they wanted to get it in there many, many times that there was a hit at his house.
That doesn't make it.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like you're
I
supposed to like have
don't- I can't remember if the dog comes in on this one or not. I don't think so.
I don't think they allowed it. They cut it off some, like they were allowed to mention it, but I think there was a limit to it. I wonder
Yeah.
if.
Well, and
Correct.
remember, like in that one where the guy hurt the dog, that man that was on the run, and he ended up
Oh, yeah.
shooting the dog. I remember they brought
Kenosha.
that one in, but I don't know
Yeah,
if this one has the
I
dog
don't.
come in.
I don't think I've ever seen a dog come in except for that trial.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's because the dog was one of the victims.
Right. Yeah, they usually don't because it's like,
Yeah,
I don't
kind of
know, it's
Prejudicial.
bias. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
that we have no burden. And maybe it sounds a bit like a broken record that I say that, but there is no such thing when it comes to a case like this. The burden is here. It is the highest burden in the land. This is a criminal case. Reasonable
good.
doubt is based on reason and common sense. On behalf of Matt Moore and my co-counsel, I am confident that after you have heard all the evidence, that you will render the appropriate verdicts of not guilty. Thank you so much.
Yay.
Thank you, counsel. State may call the first witness.
I really think I like the body cam footage
Mhm.
when they first get out there and they're standing talking outside and the friend walks up.
Mhm.
That I think he's very genuine in believing that it was her.
You thought it was
Yeah.
her, yeah. You totally see him go, oh, there she is. Oh, wait, no. That's not her.
Right. I know, and it wasn't like if he had done it and like I don't know, they try and play it off like, oh, he knew
Yeah.
it wasn't her and blah, blah. I think he looks very genuine in his. Oh, there she is. Huh,
And that woman
good. Oh,
looked-
like
Yeah. That woman just looked just like her, too.
yeah.
She really did.
Yeah. How long was this trial? Was it a while? What, like 7 days?
Yeah, it's a week long. I think day
Okay.
8 is when the jury comes back.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I emailed him yesterday and hopefully I'll hear something back. I'll probably try and he doesn't have his messages open on Twitter, so
Hmm. Well, he contacted Dylan.
well,
He reached. Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Anyways, we'll talk about it later. So yeah, that was fun. I don't know if you want to do more.
Yeah, we should, I
Tomorrow?
think. That's it. I'd like to, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not
after
doing
your-
anything now this weekend, so
Okay. Yeah, I'll be around. Yeah, because EU's doing her. Or we had
dance
that
thing.
whole fight thing. No.
Sal's in the
Yeah.
doghouse.
I'm in the doghouse, but no, she should be back Monday, Tuesday, something like that. So no Jensen this week. I need to follow up with damn Becky. Is it she's I'll get you the dick pics and nothing.
She's
Don't
holding
know.
out on you.
I know she is. She's playing hard to get. But she's a dick tease.
Oh, yeah, we'll get together. We'll make some
Yeah.
time for some more of it.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Nick, Staroff
Yeah, in half an hour.
is gonna be on in half an hour, so go check him out. I'll be there for a little bit. And Jamie Farrell, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.